Rob, what is our fourth main topic today?
John, our fourth main topic comes to us from Mr.LightzPlease. Hey, John and crew, September marks 10 years since Karl Urbans Dredd, which to me is the most underrated comic movie ever. Thoughts on wanting a sequel? In the age of decades later movies, this one surely needs a sequel.
All right, thanks a lot for writing that in, Mr. LightzPlease. 10 years. The official release date for Dredd was September 21st, tomorrow, but it played in a lot of places around the country the night before, which is today. 10 years since that Dredd movie came out. And I've got a kind of a special connection to it because at Comic-Con, the Comic-Con prior leading up to Dredd coming out, a few months before Dredd came out, I was doing my annual Masters of the Web panel at Comic-Con, and my special guest on it that year was Karl Urban. And they had invited me. They were going to do the first screening of Dredd at Comic-Con. So in the morning, Karl Urban came. He was on my panel. We talked a lot about Dredd, whatever. And then they invited me to come and be the moderator for the Q&A at the fan event, the big screening for it. And it was nerve-wracking for me because I thought the movie looked like garbage. And I was so nervous. Because I was having Karl Urban on the panel. I was like, I haven't seen the movie yet. I wasn't going to see it till later that evening. And I didn't want to pretend like I thought it was going to be good because I didn't think it was going to be any good. And I was super nervous about it. So we do the panel. Urban was fantastic on my panel. We went to the theater that night, sat down nervously knowing I was going to have to moderate this Q&A afterwards, sat down in the theater with everybody else to watch the movie. And I was blown away, shocked, because the trailers for this movie were terrible. Like not quite as bad, but rank up there with John Carter, rank right up there with Day After Tomorrow, Live, Die, Repeat. Like it was bad. The trailers were bad. And this was still a title that had the stench of that Sylvester Stallone version on it from years earlier. It was bad. So nobody had any expectations going into this movie at all. And then I still remember being in that theater, man. That theater was buzzing as that movie was playing. I still, like, right from near the beginning of the film, during that one bike chase as he's chasing down the van in the streets and the guys are getting run over, I'm like, what the hell am I watching? This is amazing. I was so in it. And Karl Urban just carried that movie so freaking perfectly. And Dredd should be brought up as one of the poster children when everybody says, why is everything being rebooted? Because movies like Dredd can happen. Dredd, which is far superior I love me some Sly Stallone. Everybody knows that. But this Dredd is so superior in every way to that other Dredd. This is why sometimes reboots are a great idea. This movie had the visceral violence, but it didn't sacrifice intriguing character for visual violence. Also, it never felt the need to go, this has to be about one man saving the whole world. No, man, this is about one cop on a mission. In many ways, it kind of had the Raid kind of vibe for it. But some people accuse this movie of being a ripoff of the Raid. This movie was in production before the Raid ever came out. So it's got that Raid kind of cop on a mission feel. It was performed beautifully. The atmosphere and aesthetic of the film was perfect. And again, the action of it and the visceralness of it, it was delicious. And that is why I think there's an argument to be made. Like, depending on if you consider Peter Jackson's live action Lord of the Rings to be a reboot of the animated Lord of the Rings. Sure. Some people do, some people don't, whatever. But that aside, I contend that this is the greatest reboot ever. And I think to this day it stands as possibly, The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing would have to be in there. Scarface would have to be in that discussion as well. There are a few other, The Fly would have to be in that discussion. But for me, this to me is the best one because there is such a huge gap between the first film and then this one. I loved it. Rob, you look back on it. What were your thoughts on Dredd as we look back on it now 10 years later? And do you think we could ever actually get a sequel to it?
Dude, I love Judge Dredd. Judge Dredd obviously comes from the pages of 2000 AD. It's a British comic character. I was a fanatic when I first got really back into comics in the early 80s. Eagle was reprinting these Dredd comics in the United States. I loved the series. I was very disappointed it's a contrast in tones if you look at the first Judge Dredd as opposed to this one. This movie, everything about this movie is great. It has incredible, there's a 3D, it was released in 3D. The 3D is some of the best on this side of Avatar. Karl Urban is perfect as Judge Dredd.
Oh, I forgot to mention Lena Headey.
Lena Headey as the villain. I mean, my God, I own this movie. I own 3D Blu-rays, 4K Blu-rays. I have action figures of, it's never been officially released, of Judge Dredd and Judge Anderson. I've never been able to get the Judge Dredd motorcycle. Anyone out there, hook me up. I love this. I love it so much. And, you know, what's interesting is they could absolutely do a new version of this film. I mean, a continuation, because I think like Terminator, the original Terminator, it has grown in stature because of cable, because of home video over the last 10 years. I absolutely think a new version of this is viable. It would be a continuation, not a reboot. Just Karl Urban comes back. There's so many, the Judge Child quest, the block wars, you know, there's so many great storylines. Judge Death. There's even that supernatural element. They could do so many cool things with this. It really kills me. I don't understand. I mean, there's one reason it didn't make a lot of money. That's the only reason we haven't seen another one. But my God, what a damn shame. This franchise is ripe for not reinvention or rebooting, but a continuation.
You know what? On one of the most infamous episodes ever of AMC Heroes, we had the producer of Dredd, and I'm forgetting, I can't remember if anybody remembers his name. He was the dude who had the
I wasn't on that show.
And yeah, you weren't on it.
Oh, Avi, yes. Addy. Oh, God.
Sakar or Shankar?
Yeah, Adi Shankar.
Adi Shankar.
Adi Shankar.
With
Adi Shankar.
Oh, I remember actually, I think I was technical producing that show, and I was like, oh my God.
It was.
The uncomfortable silences.
The most
like
painful episode of Heroes we ever did. Not that he's not a really good guy. Like we were hanging out before the show started, and like, good guy. Like, hey, a colorful character, you know, a good dude. But I remember we did Heroes with him, and we were talking about the idea about doing like a sequel and these hopes for having, because he was also producing Transylvania. No, what's the name of it? Castlevania. He was producing the animated series Castlevania for Netflix at the same time, right?
Right.
And I remember we would ask him a question, and every time we asked him a question, every answer started with
crickets.
Now, for those of you trying to listen to the podcast version of this, it is dead silence. And like every time we would ask him a question, it would be like 30 excruciating seconds of dead silence, followed by like some kind of non-answer answer. It was like crazy.
Didn't he also produce that like the R-rated Power Rangers fan film?
Yes, he did.
And he also did something recently on Netflix. I believe it was like an animated sort of superhero.
It wasn't Castlevania?
No. Someone had just mentioned it.
He did nothing. Well, I mean, I know my wife loves his Castlevania series.
Yeah.
Like, loves it. But so I just remember we had that on it. So that was like the most infamous. If some of you guys can find the link to that one, put it in the comment section. But it was like the most infamous episode we had ever done on Heroes. But I mean, look, there's no way around. This movie flopped hard. And it was those two elements. It still carried the stench of the first Judge Dredd, unfortunately.
I forgot what we were talking about. Dredd. I got so wrapped up into this.
It's Guardians of Justice.
Yeah.
Oh. Have you heard of that?
No.
I
watched the first episode. It was all right.
But I mean, that and of course the terrible trailers.
Right.
The absolute horrendous trailers. And because it failed so badly, I got to disagree with you. I don't think any studio is going to want to put up the money to make
No,
a
they're
sequel.
not going to. But they should.
Karl Urban has said forever he'd be more than willing to do it, but you know, he'd also want to get paid.
Yeah,
who's going to pay it?
I know. I know.
Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this? It is the 10th anniversary of Karl Urban's fantastic Dredd iteration. Do you guys remember it fondly? Maybe you weren't a big fan of it. Do you think they could ever actually get a sequel made? Could they find somebody to actually put up the money? Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and leave your thoughts there. Hey guys, we want to take a second to thank the sponsor of this video, MasterClass. You guys know we have been sponsored by MasterClass, and we love them here at the John Campea Show for giving us in-depth information on a wide variety of topics from the world's best experts. With MasterClass, you can learn from the world's best minds anytime, anywhere, and at your own pace. You can learn the art of filmmaking from James Cameron, improve your cooking skills from Gordon Ramsay, or learn how to make compelling YouTube videos from Marquise Brownlee. With over 150 classes from a range of world-class instructors, that thing you've always wanted to do is closer than you think. I was recently watching through the independent filmmaking course by Spike Lee, and I found it fascinating that not only did he cover the broader topics like working with actors, but he also gets into finer details like working with a cinematographer and how to properly audition a DP for your project. It was fascinating. So guys, I highly recommend that you check it out. Get unlimited access to every class, and as a John Campea Show listener, you get 15% off an annual membership. Go to masterclass.com/Campea now. That's masterclass.com/Campea for 15% off Masterclass.